Hi, everybody. So thank you so much for joining us. So welcome to the Founders Over 40. Before we get started, just wanted to highlight a few options for all attendees. If you scroll to the bottom with your mouse to this bottom of the screen, you can see several options. Clicking on the microphone icon will unmute your microphone. Clicking on the video camera button will engage or disengage your device's camera. The participants below participants button allows you to see who's in the room. And when you open the participant window, you can also provide nonverbal reactions to the presentation, such as raising your hand or a thumbs up. The chat button enables you to chat on to the entire group or to select individuals. Please feel free to utilize all of these functions throughout the presentation. And now I'd like to turn over to Karin and Alex.
Woohoo! All right, so hi everybody. I'm really super excited about this because this is my first time doing a virtual class. So I thought it was kind of like a perfect topic. So again, my name is Karin Copeland. I would like to thank, of course, Virtual Venture Cafe, Cambridge Innovation Center. I know Mara's here from the Small Business Development Center, so she's a great resource if anyone needs to connect with her as well. So I am the CEO of a company called CreateXChange. It's the X, we're the X about, it's all about, the X is where all the action happens. It's the coming together of different points of view. I spent 25 years as an industrial designer, then ran a nonprofit, and now running my own business after 2 years. And so my career has always been at the intersection of art, design, and business. I call myself a cultural futurist because I love working to kind of explore what's, predictions, possibilities about the future of work. And I love like, what's the next big thing? What's the next big cool thing? And so we design custom cutting edge programs with global thought leaders, a lot of top TED Talk speakers. We'll have an exciting update for you at the end of the program. But I left my job 2 years ago because I'm like, you're just like, God, what's next? I'm kind of bored. I feel like I just am hitting my peak. And I'm growing and learning. I participated in the very first class, not very class, when Venture Cafe and CIC opened. And what I noticed, it was super exciting for me to be in the co-working this space, but there was a lot of focus on the younger entrepreneurs. So I went to the crew and said, I'd really love to do something about older founders, founders over 40 and beyond, way beyond, because we're living longer. I felt like I'm really hitting my stride. So many people said to me, it's like, God, I want to do something. I want to go out on my own or whatever. So we founded this group. We had our very first meeting in October, where my good buddy, Aurora Archer, I had met through this whole community, the Venture Cafe community. She's the CEO of Bellatrix Group, also CEO of Abundance Productions, and she really helped me to be able to facilitate, and also amazing podcast she has called Opt-in. And we set about we had an event, we had 60 people show up, which was kind of wild. We had 60 people show up. We gave a presentation about the longevity economy, encore entrepreneurs. We realized, experience is a currency. It's a new competitive advantage. And we bring a very unique value proposition. So how do we become a resource for each other? So Aurora and I broke the group together into 3 different, sessions. Who was thinking about starting a business, who already had started a business, and had been in business for a while, and what were some of the issues that you were having? And so we were able, I have a wonderful report that I can send people after about that, but one of the things we decided to start with was really navigating the digital world, because I feel like, oh my God, I'm like the guinea pig person. I know I have a lot of amazing, fabulous qualities, of course, but, a lot of technology stuff is not necessarily one of them. So, and of course we had, it was just bringing out these different tools. We had to pivot very quickly with, of course, what's happening right now. And I think it's we're all facing similar struggles. I think now it's a bit even worse. And one of the things I wasn't super comfortable with was the virtual communications. I put on huge events with global thought leaders, and so now I had to pivot and think, what's next for me? How do I reimagine that? So when I talked to the team, we thought that building, now it's building digital connections in business and life, and it's super overwhelming. It's super overwhelming. I mean, Jen, it was funny. Jen said, it's hashtag tool jam, because I just get so overwhelmed with the technology and what really is right for me and what's right for my team. So what I did was I reached out to one of my most fabulous mentors. And one thing I love to say too, I have two of my mentors in the room. I'm very into cross-generational mentorship, and Alex Hillman has been a mentor for me for a long time, and Stan Silverman as well. So I have Alex here because I met Alex when he started his co-working, Indy Hall, maybe 14, 15 years ago. But Alex is, if you don't know him, he's always thinking about the intersection of people, relationships, trust, and business. I mean, I kind of call him my Yoda. He's way better looking now, but these days he splits his time between Indy Hall, running the Philly's oldest co-working space, teaching creative people how to bootstrap their own business, and collaborating with people and organizations with the goal of helping, all right, Alex always does a lot, 10,000 people become sustainably independent by 2029. Another thing which I thought he'd be perfect tonight in the virtual world, because he has become this incredible mentor globally with all these other co-working spaces around the globe, with business owners and executives and entrepreneurs. And he's very comfortable communicating and working in a virtual world. So what better person for all of us to have here to work with us during this time. It's been super brilliant for me. So I want to introduce Alex Hillman.
Thanks, Karin.
Woo!
Super glad to be here. Maybe like top 5 best intro, maybe? I don't know. That was really good. Thank you.
I'm a big fan. They will be too when we end, because you're an amazing resource for everyone, and especially for me at this critical time. I feel we're all reimagining our business and things are changing super fast. I feel really afraid that I'm going to be left behind. Sometimes I want to avoid and just not deal, and I'm going, well, tools and technology are the #1 way to access people. So what do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, what a weird couple of weeks, gang.
Yeah.
So when Karin approached me about this, and I've been learning about the Founders Over 40 group that she's been running for the last 6 months or so, and I'm super excited about it. I'm enthusiastic to bring together communities across Philadelphia to help each other, start, grow, and thrive. And the last 2 weeks, in a lot of ways, so many things have changed, but the one thing that hasn't changed is the goal. I just think the urgency has shifted a little bit,
right.
A lot. On one hand, we had this environment where up until recently, if you made the time and you found the resources and you got the support, you could learn it, but it was almost just as easy not to, right? We had the crutches of existing, all the existing infrastructure, and what an unusual period in time to have all of the infrastructure that we've all become so comfortable with ripped out from under us and said, use the new stuff now, right?
Yeah.
So, on one hand, I feel very fortunate to have been, I grew up in this darkness. and I'm very comfortable in these tools. But I also, within Indie Hall, for instance, we've been a heavily online focused. Almost 80% of our members don't use a desk; they interact with our community online. However, right now, when that's the only way they can interact with each other, I'm acutely aware of who's potentially being left out. Not because of that they don't know what the tool is, but because they don't have the confidence to use the tool in the way that other people in the community do. And so we're thinking a lot about this. It's not so much that there are components of talking about the right tool. We'll talk more about that in a couple of minutes, but I think there's this element of, it's not just the technology. It's, when you're good at what you do, and maybe this is a good correlation to, start being an entrepreneur. When you're really good at what you do, it's really hard to suddenly be bad at something. And so one of the things that Karin and I talked about is can we take today and create an environment where, no judgment, no expectations. Wherever you are, we're here to meet you there. And we want to sort of take you through, some of the technology, some of the decision making around the technology. And then actually we're going to try out something. This is maybe pushing the boundaries of the tech. I want to demo Zoom to you, but while we're using Zoom. And so I think we've got a little treat to show you how that works. But that'll be a little bit later in the session.
So is it back to me, Alex?
Yeah, it's back to you.
So okay, Alex. All right. Again, for me, it's a super embarrassment in a way of being out there with the fact that there's so much that I don't know. And then also, as I'm navigating this world right now, you're trying to just keep up with your regular workload, but then I'm using tools that I never used before. And so there's so much time that I'm spending doing that, and I feel like I'm not really being that productive. So I guess my question to you is how do we decide, Alex, like what are the tools that are right for us? And because we're all different types of learners. Like I'm a very visual learner. So I always ask people, what CRM are you using? What communication tool are you using? What are you using? And then everybody's giving me their certain answers, but then maybe Asana or, that tool is not great for me because I'm visual. And so how do we make those decisions and how have you done that, Alex?
So I have another lens to look at this through, and that my background is in developing software and tools. And so I can say this without fear of making anybody upset, is most software is pretty terrible and confusing. I think one of the goal, when we come into this, we're like, I want the perfect tool. I think one of the first things we can do is remove the idea of a perfect tool from our goal set, and say that, especially if we're looking at, all-in-one tools. I'm looking for one tool that does it all, the unicorn. Well, A, it probably doesn't exist. And B, if something is close, there's a very good chance that it's going to be one of those, jack of all trades, master of none. So my own personal philosophy is I try and look for tools that specialize and do one thing really well. So before I sit down to look at a tool, I try to understand what the problem is. What's the thing I'm trying to solve? And if you don't know what problem you're trying to solve, no tool's going to fix it, number one. And number two is different tools that look the same or similar, or maybe even describe themselves similarly, are going to address a problem differently. The other factor that I take into consideration is new hotness, right? So in we'll maybe say the youthful technology world, everyone wants to use bleeding edge technology. It's very exciting.
It's the fear of missing out. I'm obsessed with that stuff. I'm like, oh my God, there's somebody doing something I don't know about. I want the latest and greatest.
Right. But here's the other thing is in the context of business, reliable's got a lot of value.
Yeah.
And one of the key downsides of bleeding edge is is a loss of reliability. That's not a guarantee, but there's a high likelihood that something that is brand new has not been battle tested. And so to rely on it for business in particular is introducing a risk. So I look for things that are pretty well tested. And do other people do other people in the industry use this, and does it serve them well? I don't like asking, do you like it? Because that's a very subjective, but like, are you succeeding while using this tool? I wrote an article. If you search, I think it's Alex Hillman Tech Stack 2019. I wrote an article last year about the technology stack that we use to run my education business. And one of the things that I point out in the beginning is I hate most of the tools that we use, but they help us serve our customers and they help us make money. And so I deal with hating them. Right. And I think that's just one of the factors that go into it. The last thing I'll say about new hotness is, especially when a tool is in rapid development, lots of new features, things are changing, you're basically signing up to try and use a moving target. And if you don't love learning where everything is, if you're the kind of person who if you're the kind of person who walking into your living room and somebody rearranged things and that would really screw up your day, using brand new software is going to make your life really difficult. And so, whether it's enterprise software or just more mature software, thank you for sharing that link. More mature software, reducing the odds that every time you log in, there's going to be a whole bunch of new things to learn, again, is an advantage. And one that I think massively offsets the FOMO. And again, this is all about being effective. So for me, it's what tool gets the job done, which means understanding what the job is.
But also, Alex, isn't that, so what you're saying, so do you use the same tools for all your different businesses you have? Alex has a lot of different businesses. Are you using the same tools? I mean,
so I have sort of a foundation stack that I try and keep consistent. The biggest difference I'd say is how many people I'm working with. Right. So in a business where I'm working with, 2, maybe 3 people, I have a lot more control. And also depending on my role in that group of people, I may decide to exert that control or not. The bigger the group of collaborators is, the more complicated it gets. For instance, if, I'm working with a group of people and someone says, let's use tool XYZ, let's use Basecamp instead of Asana, just to throw out a couple of names. They're both project management tools. Do I have a strong enough opinion about my own experience having used one to say why I don't want to use the other? It's sort of a, pick and choose my battle. So the more collaborators, and if somebody else really is motivated to use another tool, I will generally take the time to try and learn it. Or in the case, it's not just about learning the tool, it's learning how they use the tool. So saying, hey, I'm happy to use your tool. Would you mind spending 15 or 30 minutes on a Zoom call and just kind of walk me through how you use it? Because how people use software is also not always the same, even within the same tool. So using collaborative software, I think one of the keys is using tools like Zoom, or having them record a screencast. One of my favorite tools for recording videos of what's happening on your screen while you talk over it is called Loom, Loom. So there's Loom and Zoom. That's not confusing.
Right.
Yeah. Earlier today, somebody asked, hey, I don't know how to do this. And I'd spent 90 seconds. I recorded a little Loom video and I sent them a link, and it was so much
Alex,
faster.
that was me. That was me when I had a hard time, because I struggle now because I used Microsoft in my other, business world. And then I'm really learning how to use the G Suite. And so I was trying to transfer from Word to, So
yes, that was you. And I wasn't just not trying to blow up your spot. That was somebody else today. My point is this happens all the time.
Yeah.
And I think, to realize that, it doesn't feel great to say, I don't know, but this is an environment where when you're collaborating, saying I don't know is super valuable. And another way to say I don't know is, hey, can you show me? right? And to get on a real quick call or something
Yeah.
where we can look at each other's screen. And for me, it's I want to see how they're using the tool, but I also want to see how they're thinking, right? And so having them actually sort of talk through it, I think it just helps me understand them as a person. The understanding the tool is just is a byproduct of that. These tools connect people, and I think it's easy to get wrapped up in the tool and realize the
Yeah.
person using the tool is the thing you really need to understand. Um, in addition to the which buttons to press and things like that.
Okay, Alex, that's the whole, like, okay, how much time, so that I got kind of irritated at Alex because I'm like, can't you just do that for me, Alex? Why are you
Yeah.
sending me that Loom thing and making me do that? Because you know what, it's hard is when you come from, like,
Yeah.
you have all these people that are, you're running something and all these people are doing stuff and they know how to do it way better than you. And then I'm going, oh my God, well, who's going to do that now? Does it have to be me? And look, that's a valid thing because you're going, okay, I'm good at X things. What should I spend my time working on? And what shouldn't I spend my time working on? So that's
Right.
that's I think a huge concern probably of a lot of people because we're not so great at it. And
Sure.
it does, I mean, like I feel like, oh my God, I got to sell, I got to do blah, blah, blah. So anyway.
Yep. So, I mean, my thought on that is you have to treat it like an investment, right? Learning a thing, taking a few minutes or even, 30 minutes or an hour with somebody is something that will pay dividends over time. And I think we're in a kind of unusual, a very unusual and perhaps unprecedented and unreplicatable environment where, um, 4 weeks ago, it was a bit more excusable to be annoyed with somebody for not knowing. And right now, having this, we all have things we have to figure out. And I feel like there's just everyone is being worn thin. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong,
Yeah.
but I think right now it is more apparent than ever before, the value of investing in learning a thing now, but also the value of investing in spending some time working with a teammate or a collaborator or a family member, whatever it might be. That there are people who are really proficient in these tools who right now are saying, hey, I don't want you to be on the outside just because you don't know how to use it or you're not confident.
Right.
The tricky part, and I think the opportunity for this community, Founders Over 40, being connected with the rest of Philadelphia, is to build those bridges. And for you to have somebody that, if you're, you don't want to turn to, your own kids or a coworker, to have an ally, to have a peer, to have a buddy system, be like, I'm going out of my mind on this today. First of all, I'll say, like, just know it's not just you. Everyone struggles with this. But that learning these tools, like any other tool, is an investment. The analogy that I used, and we'll come back to this a little bit later on, is it's like learning knife skills. Like, you can go through your entire life not really knowing how to hold a knife and still be able to cut things, right? But you take one knife skills class and you realize you had no idea how to use a knife, and how much easier it is to cut things, how much faster you can cut things, how much more comfortably you can work in the kitchen. And I think that we have to think of all of these tools that way, like treating it as knife skills, where that investment of 30 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or 60 minutes of learning those fundamentals, finding someone to teach you, is 100% worth it, especially if it's in a business context. Because I mean, we have to be honest. I don't know what the new normal looks like. This is the new normal now. I think we can be fairly confident that whatever we go back to isn't going to look like before. So, like, this is not stuff to get through the next 6 weeks or 6 months. This is for the rest of your career. And I also think there's learning how to learn is another really valuable skill, and learning what your own, Karin, you said you're a visual learner. So, like, understand your own way of learning. If having someone sit next to you, virtually or otherwise, helps you, ask for that help. If you're the kind of person who really needs to be independent and watch a thing over and over, YouTube is an incredible resource for learning how to do really incredibly microscopic tasks. Searching YouTube for almost any piece of software and the thing you're trying to do, some knucklehead out there already recorded it, and you can hit rewind as many times as you want and not feel dumb about it, right? That's incredible. So that's using tools to solve your tools problem. But yeah, I think it is worth it to learn.
So do you want to go to the Zoom and Slack
Yeah,
right
let's
now?
talk about that. Yeah.
Let's talk about the two that Alex, when we're having this conversation, the two that he really recommended, and that was really good for me because I know he's been using these two tools for a very long amount of time, and he hasn't jumped to the latest and greatest, whatever. So I thought that this might be a great time to talk about that, Alex.
Sure. So, the context that I have, I mean, I use these all over the place. We've all been thrust into Zoom now. My wife has been joking because she overhears. She's like, "Are you being sponsored by Zoom?" Because I hear the word Zoom 1,000 times a day. So I'm investing in my friends and colleagues and teaching the many ways to use this tool. We use it heavily at Indie Hall, and then Slack is another one we use a lot. You've probably heard of a lot. It's extremely confusing and overwhelming, especially if you have not grown up in a text-based chat environment. So I'll talk a little bit about both of those, starting with Zoom. I think I've spent a lot of time doing video chat stuff. Like I said before, no tool is perfect. There is one thing that video conferencing software needs to do, and the video needs to work. 100% of the time. I cannot spend time, fiddling with whatever. All the extra features are cool, but Zoom, for the brilliance of their engineering, the video basically always works, and the audio basically always works, even on mediocre connections. Like you can, I don't know if you know this, you can install Zoom on your cell phone, and as long as you have a decent reception, you can do video chat on your cell phone over LTE. That's a miracle. And I have not found myself being able to rely on any other tool as much as Zoom. And I'll redouble that and say the fact that the entire world discovered Zoom in the last 2 weeks and they still have really not crashed is a modern miracle. Their stock price is through the roof and they deserve every nickel. Zoom is when I talked before about reliability, Zoom is a reliability play. This tool will work. It does not change a lot. They make incremental improvements, and when they make improvements, they're very good. But Zoom is a reliable tool. And I'd say it's most reliable for for the one-on-one. So like I've been in one-on-one Zoom conversations basically all day long for the last 2 weeks. When you're trying to replicate sitting next to somebody and can't sit next to them, I think this is the best tool on the internet for it. Remarkably, it's also the best tool for exactly what we're doing. Recreating the experience of being in a room with a group of other people, which is something that we really need right now as social creatures. But from a business perspective, what is the number one definition of a bad meeting? One person at the room talking at everybody else, right? That's not a meeting, that's a presentation, right? In terms of meetings, something that allows people to talk across each other, and maybe what we're doing right now is not the best representation of that, but I've hosted rooms of upwards of 30 people where we're actually having a conversation, not just having a presenter at the front of the room. That's pretty amazing.
So Alex, I guess before we go on, there's one thing that I definitely want to add in here as well, is because now we're we've been forced to really engage everybody in our families as well. Like I'm one of 5 girls, you can't see anybody. Like you're going, I want to host a Zoom family dinner on Sunday night. And so now we're going, oh my God, and all the different age ranges of it. So how do we coordinate that? Because I do think now it is a time that we're not only dealing with business stuff, if we want to be connected to our family, we have to be able to communicate, to be able to do that as well. So any advice on that one?
Maybe a moment of catharsis before we talk about any of advice. Last weekend, my mom called and she said to me and my sister and said, "Hey, can we do it's like a family dinner over video chat?" She's feeling a little lonely. Thought it'd be nice to get the family together. And we said, "Yeah, sure." She goes, "Cool. Can you set up the FaceTime call?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. No problem. I know how to use FaceTime. Piece of cake." And then I was 10 minutes late to dinner because I couldn't figure out how to set up a group FaceTime. And so, what's the lesson here? A, if you haven't done it before, there's a very good chance you're not going to know how to do it. And Apple is known for being super intuitive. I've learned a lot of technology, and it took a remarkable 10 minutes to figure out how to start a call with my family. Now I know how to do it. It's a little bit easier, but just to say, like, we all go through this. I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer to using the same tools or different tools for your family. One of my general pieces of advice for any sort of online community building is use what most other people are comfortable with. And even if that means you have to learn a little bit extra, that's if you think about it from a leadership perspective, it's you're going to take a little bit of extra pain and heat so everyone can have a better experience and do the thing that matters. But when all else is equal, use what works, use what you've used before. If you're using something that other people, so when I said yes to FaceTime, the reason was because in my head, I was like, do I really want to teach mom Zoom right now?
Yeah, right.
And so I was like, yeah, we'll use FaceTime, no problem. And the irony of all of that, of course, is earlier in the day, she had a Zoom call with her brother and her brother's family. And so she already knew how to use Zoom. And I wasn't giving my mom enough credit, first of all. But I think, that I was thinking about what would be the least painful for her. And for FaceTime, she just has to pick up the phone. So for me, the goal there is I want other people to be able to just, log in and get there. And so if you're getting together with your team, maybe that's a priority. If it's with your family, maybe that's a priority. I think those are all important considerations.
So Alex, I'm looking at what somebody's saying in the chat, because I use Slack. So how about, what's the difference between Slack versus Trello?
So I would say Slack and Trello are actually super different categories of software.
Okay.
I'd put Trello into a similar category. You mentioned Asana earlier.
Okay.
Basecamp.
So
like a task manager. Slack is my favorite way of describing it. If you're in any sort of group text with your family, it's like that, but on your computer. And instead of one group text, when you join a Slack, what they call a workspace, it's actually a collection of group chats that are broken up into rooms, or what they call channels.
And projects, I guess. Yeah.
And or it could be, yeah. So projects, channels could be, and the thing with channels can be organized around really anything. Mm-hmm. What I will say is Slack and Trello have a similar strength and weakness in that they can do so many things, but you have to set them up. Right? So when you log into Slack, there's a lot of things to do, but it's not clear what to do. And part of that is because you have to decide what rooms I want to set up. So imagine buying a house, and instead of that house already having rooms predetermined, you're like, well, how many bathrooms do I want to have? Where do I want the kitchen? And you have to set up the room and describe it and what it's for. And in Slack and in virtual space, you both get to and have to do that as well. If it's useful, I'll actually share the Indie Hall Slack real quick for folks who haven't seen it.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Give me 1 second. And actually what I'll do is I'll open up not the Indie Hall Slack, but another one that maybe is a little more representative of a workplace. So you should be able to see what is the 30 by 500 Academy Slack. This is that learning business that I mentioned earlier that I have. And what you can see is down the left-hand side, let me hide a few things. Down the left-hand side, we have it broken down into, in this case, areas of study. So people that are preparing for a product launch, people that want critique on their product pitch, people that are sharing success stories, people that have questions about technology and tools, and then sort of lounge is a general chat and things like that. The philosophy that I have going into this is don't create rooms until you need them, right? Because it's super fast and easy to set up a room. It's as easy as coming down here, add channel, create a channel, and then give it a name. If only building the rooms in your house or your office were that easy, right? And that can be an open channel that anybody in Slack can join, or a private channel that's just you and a couple of specific teammates or things like that. So the upside to Slack is that it's this very, very flexible, configurable thing. The downside is if you have not grown up, speaking and communicating in text, this is going to be really overwhelming, because one of the things that'll happen is you'll log into Slack, and if other people were having conversations, the first thing you're going to see is that you have to read all of
All
this
the way
stuff.
up. Yeah. Right.
And I think one of the best pieces of advice I can get is to decide ahead of time and communicate with whoever you're sharing a Slack with what the expectations are around reading the history. Is everyone expecting everyone else to read everything? Or are there certain channels that are priority where you should read everything, and other channels that are like side conversation, but somebody will bring the decision back to the main channel? So you can think about it a bit more like organizational design within your business, where you can set up a channel for the marketing team to make a bunch of decisions, so long as somebody from the marketing team then brings that decision back to the main shared channel and says, was talking with so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. Here's the decision we made. If you're interested in how we made it, now you can go back and read the history. Does that make sense?
Yes. How many people can you have on a Slack channel? This depends on what you're paying, right?
Well, so the free version is essentially unlimited.
Really?
If you have a paid version, it is a price per user. And there's a bunch of differences between the two. The biggest one is how much of the history, right? So with a free account, you actually lose some of that text-based history. It keeps 10,000 messages, which, depending on how big your organization is, could last you weeks, or it could last you a day. So I think that's a consideration as well. Here's the thing I'll say about Slack. Slack is this like today, and if you've heard about it, it seems to be this like multi-purpose tool for talking together online. And I actually put it really far down the totem pole in terms of effectiveness when people really need to communicate and understand, right? Getting together on a video chat is so much more valuable in such a smaller amount of time. The biggest difference between the two is what folks refer to in sort of the online space as synchronous and asynchronous. So what we're doing right now is we're in sync. We're all here in the same amount of time. What's nice about Zoom is it's recording, as you probably see up in the top corner. Yeah. So somebody else, if they wanted to go back and watch this hour-long video, they could. But with Slack, it's asynchronous, meaning everything we talk about, somebody else can go look at later, right? So I think when it comes to, I think about it in terms of, the best analogy I have is high gear and low gear, right? Slack requires an incredible amount of energy and attention. So it's only really good for short bursts of communication, right? We need to get together and hash something out real quick. But trying to pay attention to Slack all day long is setting yourself up for a whole lot of pain. And if you're in an environment where people are expecting that, I would say that's an opportunity to have a conversation about those expectations, because I think as a business person who's got lots of things to pay attention to, spending all day worrying about what's happening in Slack is a poor use of Slack. The best use of Slack is letting other people communicate with each other. And if you need to know something, it gives you kind of a bird's eye view of what's going on.
Hey, you know, Alex, this is something I struggle a lot with, because I like to, and I guess that's the creative designer person in me, like I really like to communicate with people that I'm working with. I like to, be on the phone with them instead of communicating over something. And I struggle with that a bit, because I find a lot of people don't like to really talk. And for me, it's a way for me to solve problems and to be able to do it much quicker, to get somewhere much quicker than me having to write it down, especially when you're trying to articulate a concept or an idea. Like I'm more like, oh, let's just get on the phone for 2 minutes and talk that out, instead of me trying to articulate that over an email or Slack or whatever. So that's something is that more of a generational, or what do you find with that?
I mean, my response to things that look and feel generational is, I mean, sometimes they are a little bit, but I also just think it comes down to an element of self-awareness and knowing what works for you. And in the same way that you need to communicate what works for you or doesn't work for you with your team when we're working in meet space, real space, I think online tools require that. They just require it more. And so, again, it comes back to an investment mindset: is how valuable is it to figure this out, figure out your own self-awareness and then be able to communicate it with the other team members and say, hey, this is how I work better.
Yep.
If that doesn't work for you, can we find a compromise? Collaboration tools don't work if you're not willing to collaborate. The tool's not going to do the collaboration, right? And collaboration is all about being supportive of one another, understanding yourself and one another.
I mean, is it, I just always, because I always do it in such a way, like if there's people or people, actually, I know Orly's on this call as well, are people, when you're creating something new and how you're talking and I might say something and then you're adding on to it. Does that actually happen in writing sometimes?
Sure does. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and it absolutely, again, it absolutely does and can.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't expect you to jump in and get there. But I also think that the learning curve, while initially steep, is not necessarily as long as you might think it is.
Yeah.
I think the hard part for folks initially is, especially when the text starts moving really quickly, is really just keep knowing where to put your eyes, right? When you're looking at a book, you're in control of where the text is when the text is scrolling. I think that's the hardest part, and it gets easier with practice like anything else. But I think the other part is and maybe this is something that's a bit more generational, but I also think it's something that it depends on the person, is where you're used to writing out a complete thought, reading it and being like, yes, send. Whereas with text, you can write out a sentence or even a part of a sentence, right? So when I'm in chat, the way I'm typing is a bit more the way that I talk. I haven't thought about the entire thing I'm about to say before I say it. I say it in fragments and things like that. Right. That's probably the biggest mental shift in terms of communicating mostly over text.
Orly, what do you think about that?
Myself. It's funny, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about my kids who are Generation Zs, and they, when they send me a text, it's very much informational, right? It's a question. It's not a conversation. And I think what I'm finding, because I'm actually very familiar. I mean, I'm very comfortable both on text and email, and I am starting to get very comfortable with Zoom. Although I've been using it for a while, not just since the last couple of weeks. But I think it is a generational thing that a lot of, again, Generation Zs, they're not. I think they're struggling with kind of putting together a comprehensive idea versus
right.
Because for them it's more about, it's kind of like stream of consciousness. Like something comes to your mind, you write it down. An email, it's like, right, back when people wrote letters, you remember those? Yeah, a long time ago. I can't even remember I mean, I write cards, but I can't remember the last time I wrote a letter.
I think you're right. At the same time, I work with a lot of folks who are later in their career, and the way they email is more like the way people chat. Yeah. They it's short bursts. So I think I think there is definitely a psychological difference, and I think a lot of it also comes down to your own comfort and comprehension and communication. Again, it comes back, the tools aren't necessary. I mean, they have strengths and weaknesses, but your strengths and weaknesses are also going to be highlighted for better or worse by a tool. So if communication in any style is a struggle, these tools that require you to work a little bit harder are going to be harder. But that's, I hesitate to absolve the tool of fault. But I think it's just a factor of, again, I think this comes back to that knife skills analogy, where if you learn how to use it more than just what buttons to press, but actually how to feel comfortable using it and proficient using it, a light bulb switches. And maybe, Karin, this is a good time to flip over to
the knife, right?
To the knife skills, right?
Yeah.
So I want to try something, and I hope this will work. I wanted to, Karin and I were talking about that knife skills analogy, and I thought.
But also, okay, one more thing, Alex.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, the knife skill, okay, you're learning knife skills, but there are also a lot of different knives for different things that you're doing too, right? I mean,
Yes. Well, they
there's
can
hard
be.
skills if you're just chopping, but then they're different. Okay.
So I mean, I think the thing is learn one at a time.
Right.
Yeah, I think, I think part of the challenge right here is being thrust into learning all kinds of things. And just like
Yeah.
Karin and I made the decision, like we could have made this session, 10 tools you need to learn. And that would have been a nightmare for everybody. And we wouldn't have been able to go deep. And so instead we want to say, like, let's have this conversation and then pick one tool and teach you a few things, in addition to the fundamentals that are more around that element of comfort and confidence. So I want to try this experiment in teaching Zoom as a knife skill. And we want your feedback. One of our ideas here is to do videos like this for lots of tools that people are trying to learn, and collect and share that experience and expertise. So
Now, did you do this on Loom?
I did do this on Loom. Yeah.
Okay.
So what I did was, there's an issue when I'm screen
That's a
share
tool
on
that
Zoom.
I didn't even know about. I didn't even know about Loom.
When I screen share on Zoom, you can't see what's happening on Zoom. It's like you break the matrix. So one of the cool things, I think this will work. I have not tested this fully, but we're going to take a little bit of a gamble, is I'm going to do a screen share. Let me open the video. Hang on. And you should be able to now see a version of me that looks frozen. Everybody sees that?
Yeah.
I'm nodding. Cool. Give me one sec. Share this, share computer sound, optimize for video. All right. Let's see how this goes. What's up, everybody? I'm going to take you on a quick knife skills tour. Everyone able to hear the other me talking? Want to take you through some of the common technical questions. Where is this button? How does this work? What does that do? Get you a little more confident using Zoom, not just as a participant, but as somebody who hosts a meeting. There's actually two different kinds of Zoom accounts. There's a guest account, which is probably what you're using right now to participate in the session with Karin and I. And then there's a host account. And I'm going to show you things from the host account perspective. Things are a little bit different, and I'll point out a few of them. But as you can see, I'm logged into Zoom right now. If you don't already have a Zoom account, because you can attend Zoom meetings without an account, you just need the software. But you do want to get an account in order to host. You can go to zoom.us, sign up for a free account, and that lets you host meetings up to 40 minutes totally free. If you want to host meetings that are longer, get some of the more advanced features, it is worth paying. It's about $15 a month for a paid account, which is a steal for how many hours a day or week you might be spending in this tool. But the host account is where all the power tools are. So first off, I do want to point out that if you're nervous about being on camera, that is totally understandable. Even someone who's comfortable being in front of a room full of people, for some reason the camera comes on and we tense up, we freeze up. I can say this, it gets easier with practice. It is definitely different to talk to people on a screen than it does to talk to them in person, but if you keep doing it, you will get better at it. And one of the ways you can be a little more confident on screen is to adjust the position of your camera. So if you're on a laptop or a mobile phone or something like that, it might be down a little bit lower. And part of the reason I look the way I do is because my camera is actually up here. It's a little bit above my forehead. So what you want to do is actually get your camera up higher, at eye level or higher. Easy ways to do that. You can put your laptop up on a stack of books, or you can go to Staples or whatever and grab one of those laptop risers. They're less than $50, and it gets your camera up high, and it helps you look as good as you can. Is going to help you be a little bit more confident, and of course that's going to help you run a better meeting. So I'm going to start an actual Zoom meeting, which when you've logged into Zoom with a host account, you see this orange new meeting button. You can click right on that, and it opens up this view. And now you can see yourself, just like I can see myself. This is the main view without anybody else in it. Lets you do a little check, is there anything in the background that I didn't mean to be there? Is my hair okay? But the other thing that you can do from this view is get your Zoom link, your Zoom URL. This is important in terms of sharing to other people and saying, hey, come meet me here. And the way you do that is really easy. You start up this screen and you click this little I, and it'll say your name's personal meeting room, but this invitation URL right here, you can highlight and copy that, or they make it even easier. Just click copy URL. It puts it on your clipboard. And lets you then share that via email and a calendar invite, wherever else, and anyone you send that link to is going to they click on it, it's going to open up Zoom on their computer or their mobile device and bring them right to you where you're waiting for them. And if you're not there, it'll put them in a little waiting room until you show up. Pretty handy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, another thing that I want to point out is where the tools are. If you spend a lot of time in Microsoft tools, for instance, like Word and Excel and Outlook, you're probably used to the tools being up at the top, right? That's where all the buttons are. That's where the menus are. And that's where all the power tools are. And Zoom is a little bit different. And I'm pretty sure this is true on both Mac, PC, even Linux, where if you mouse over, you move in the cursor in front of the screen, like you can see mine moving, all the power tools, all the buttons are actually down at the bottom. So I think one of the reasons Zoom feels disorienting is because so many people are used to the tools being up top, and they put it down at the bottom. That was just their choice. But knowing where those tools are, when you're used to reaching up, reach down, that's where everything is. And you will notice that if you move your cursor away, it moves them out of the screen, so you have the full video, which will be useful, especially as you have more people in a meeting. But all you need to do is, to get it back, is move your cursor back onto the screen. And if it's not coming up, you can just click on the screen and make sure that it is the one that is highlighted, and then it'll show up for you. Now that I've showed you around some of those basics, I'm actually going to grab my share link and invite one of my teammates on screen to take you through a few more things. So grab my URL.
Okay.
And now off screen, I've shared that link with my team at Anaya. And in just a couple of seconds, she's going to show up on screen and join us here in this meeting and help me take you through a couple more of the features of Zoom. Perfect timing. So now that Anaya has jumped into the room, you'll see that it's going to put all the other guests up at the top and you down at the bottom. And depending on the configuration, as other people speak, it might actually bring them into focus down below, which gets kind of disorienting. So one of the things that I recommend people do, and I wish this was a default that you could set, but I haven't found it, is to start using gallery view, or as we call it, Brady Bunch view. So if you move your cursor up in the top right, there's this gallery view button. You click on that and it's going to put us side by side. And as more people come into the meeting, it's going to make our videos a little bit smaller and start to tile us out, just like the Brady Bunch grid from the opening of the TV show. This is my favorite way, especially as groups grow, to bring people together. And if you do for some reason want to go back to speaker view, which it'll also automatically do when you share your screen, we'll talk about that in just a second, you can just go back up here and toggle back to speaker view. But gallery view is my favorite way to having a meeting, so you can see everybody's faces, all their reactions at the same time. It starts feeling a little bit more like a meeting. Speaking of meetings, another thing that is super helpful in terms of leading a meeting is making sure people have an opportunity to speak, right? And one of the easiest ways to do that in an online meeting is to ask people to raise their hands. So there's two ways to do this. One is the old-fashioned way, which is if everyone has got their video camera on, to have them just raise their hand, right? And that allows you to take note that Anaya might have something to say. I like to acknowledge that I saw somebody raise their hand when I maybe finish my thought. Take a note that I've got them in line, and then when I finish my thought, I'll hand it off to them. But Zoom does make this easy to do in the software as well. Also, if there's a bigger group, or if people don't have webcams on their computer for some reason, they can maybe dial in still. And that is to actually click the raise hand button. And the way you do that, and you can follow along if you like, down in the bottom of your screen, where on mine it shows manage participants, yours says participants. And if you click on that, you should see a button that doesn't appear on mine because I'm a host, but does appear on yours where you can raise your hand. And you can click on that right now and test that out. I'm going to have Anaya do the same. Anaya, can you raise your hand? And you can see as the host, it shows me a little blue hand up here that Anaya's got something to say. And now she knows by clicking that I've acknowledged it. And Zoom's pretty smart. It's actually going to move, if you've got a long list of participants, it'll move people with their hands raised all the way up to the top. And you can just go through them and have them either ask their questions or give their input, whatever it might be. And then people can lower their own hands, or you as the host can also mouse over their name and click lower hand, remove the blue hand as well. So easy way to have people take their turn, make sure everyone's getting their time in an online meeting. The last thing that I want to show you before we do that, though, is how to share your screen, because I mentioned that before. So I'm going to go down here at the bottom. Again, this is a super valuable little powerful tool. Click on share screen. And sometimes people are nervous about sharing their screen because maybe there's other documents up or things in your desktop. Maybe it's kind of messy. You don't want to show everybody everything. So instead of sharing your desktop, if you have another window open, you can choose a very specific window. So I'm going to close this first, and let's open up just the Indie Hall website in a Chrome browser, right? Let's say I wanted to share that, maybe get some feedback on the website or something like that. So if I click share screen, now I can choose a very specific screen, that one. It even gives you a little preview. And when I click share, for me, it puts the attendees over on the side and lets me move around, and anything I do on my screen, other people are going to see. And then what you'll see on your screen is more like what you're experiencing right now, with all of the participants up across the top and a big view of whatever's being shared. When you're ready to stop sharing, you can click on stop share. We're back into Brady Bunch view, and that's it. Two last little pieces of etiquette that I like to share. One is if somebody does enter a meeting partway through, I like to wave hello. I just think it's a friendly thing to do. It's the kind of thing that you would probably do in an in-person meeting. You don't have to stop talking. You don't even have to acknowledge their name. I just think it's nice to wave, say hello, and have folks know that you do see them. And similarly, to say goodbye. Just because it's an online meeting doesn't mean we leave politeness at the door. Saying goodbye, wishing people a good rest of their day or afternoon or whatever it might be is really nice. And when you do, there is something that I want to show you. When you're ready to end a meeting, just like the one that we're having here with Anea, you mouse over the screen again to get the bar and click on End Meeting. And when you do, it's going to give you a couple of options. And which option you click is important. I've accidentally clicked the wrong one. If the meeting is over and everyone is going home, so to speak, and you want to close Zoom entirely, you can click End Meeting for All. It's going to bump everybody out. But sometimes the meeting's going on, there's some good conversation, but you need to leave. You need to leave the virtual space. But you want to allow them to continue speaking. Zoom lets that happen. You don't kick them out of your room unless you want to. And if you just click on Leave Meeting, it will close it for you. Your camera will stop. Your microphone will stop. Any of your screen sharing will stop. And they'll be able to continue talking until the last person is there. So hopefully that little knife skills tour was helpful for you, getting a little more comfortable and confident in Zoom. We're going to head over into the real Zoom, since this is a recording, for any questions as we wrap up today's session. Hope that was helpful, and I'll see you over there. Bye.
That was awesome.
I gotta go.
That was awesome. Yay. That was super great. What's our time like? Hold on. Where are we?
So I just got a message that we've got a little less than 5 minutes.
Okay.
I got a great question from Orly, so I want to definitely hit it first. But maybe we can just do a super quick bullet points. What's coming next, Karin?
What was that? What's our next event?
Our next steps.
Oh, next steps for here. We were going to do a little survey. We were going to do a survey after this event. We'll send out, we have everybody's email address. We'll send out a survey and ask, like, what tool do you want to do next? And then we'll have another event coming. I'll talk to Tracy and Jen in the next couple weeks. Look for everything in your inbox. And again, we would just love to hear from you. Like, what are you struggling with? And again, we'll send that survey out. But I think, especially with what's happening right now, what is everybody really struggling with, and what do you think we can work on or talk about next? It's really important to everybody. I think that's what we're gonna do.
Dig it. I'm also super happy to hear feedback after the session about the knife skills video. Are there, is it too basic, too advanced? I think I went too fast because I was trying to fit it into 10 minutes for this presentation. Yeah. So I will slow down ones in the future. But other than that, like, is that format helpful, and how could I make it better in the future? Because like Karin said, we'll figure out what tools you want to learn, and we'll do videos similar to that.
And look, I'm super happy. We were able to pivot this very quickly. I think we sent the email out on Monday. And thank you so much, Alex, for helping us with this. We just had to completely change the idea a bit, and of course the format. So look, I'm just really happy because I think that this is a community of people, and we want to hear from you what you want, what everybody wants, and what would be again useful to all of you in the future. So we'll do that survey.
Yeah, I'll answer. I've got a real good question from Orly, and if I can answer it quickly, maybe I'll answer one more. Question was, is Slack a good platform for teaching, or is there a 40-minute limit like the basic Zoom? So with the free version of Slack, you can use it for as long as you want. The issue is that if there are more than 10,000 individual messages posted in that free Slack, you you can't see the history past 10,000 messages. So if your students being able to see that chat history is important, that's a thing to take into consideration. Is it a good platform for teaching? I've used chat for teaching, and I would say unless it really plays to your strengths, I would pick something like Zoom for video over text for chat. Unless both you and the people you're teaching are already proficient in that style of communication, learning over text is absolutely possible. It's just hard.
So I know we have to go, but is there, Alex, I can get Alex's contact information as well when I send up the follow email and the survey, so you can stay connected with us. And again, we're looking to redo this in the next couple of weeks, to just continue the conversation. And also, this is super exciting. I'm going to be doing next Thursday. You know, I bring in these global thought leader speakers. I mean, super exciting. Of course, Alex as well, because you know we love Alex. But I have the woman that wrote Girl Decoded. She's a scientist. She is one of the top Forbes women in tech and fortunes, and she was the one that was really pioneering human perception in AI and understanding, like, how do we give more humanistic emotion to technology. So I have her next Thursday. I think it's 5 to 6, Jen. We're just trying to take advantage of not take advantage of, there's a lot of amazing people that just want to tell their story. I was going to be doing a big event with her in person before. She really is excited to come to the community next week for an hour and to talk about her new book. So stay in touch with us. Alex, anything next for you we need to know about?
No, reach out to me anytime if you're on Twitter at Alex Hillman, but my email is always open, alex@indyhall.org, and I will be happy to help out.
Woo. Hey, thank you everybody for helping me with my first time tonight. Thank you for coming and showing up, and it was really exciting.
Yeah, thank you both, Alex and Karin. It was great. Now we have so many tools to explore. And for anybody that can stick around, we have another great session coming up, a live podcast on human capital and economic growth. So if you can, please stay for that, or join the cafe for more networking and connecting with